Next up, the 2018 Farm Bill made it possible for states like Nebraska to legalize hemp production. It's been touted as a potential multi-billion-dollar cash crop by local lawmakers who wanted to see how the controversial crop would benefit the agricultural landscape here. However, in Nebraska's inaugural year of growing hemp, only 10 licenses were granted to potential producers. This week, Bill Dodd is taking a look at how the hemp industry is shaping up in the Cornhusker State. Bill?
Thanks, Troy. As of now, only 10 applicants out of several dozen in the state have been granted permission from the Nebraska Department of Agriculture to pursue hemp production. In the short amount of time these producers have had to acclimate to growing a new crop, it's becoming clearer by the day that an overabundance of hemp in the heartland isn't going to happen overnight. Out near Plattsmouth, Nebraska, there's a farming operation known as the Hop Yard. It's run by Annette and Bruce Wiles, and it's pretty obvious when you see it for the first time, this isn't your typical Nebraska farming operation. Bruce is a third-generation farmer who has had his fair share of tending to more traditional crops like corn and soy before they decided to try their hand at growing specialty crops like hops. And when the state made it official that hemp could be legally grown in Nebraska, they were one of the first in line to apply for a license.
So with Bruce being a third-generation farmer, and working with the university before, it's like, what do you do to keep kids interested in agriculture? What else can you do? Today, if you aren't on a large farm and your family doesn't have the equipment and the acres and you're in corn and beans, for a young kid to graduate out of college, you almost aren't going to be able to start your own business or farm. So our goal was to try other specialty crops that you can grow on a small acreage, that somebody can start on their own and really become a farmer at a young age without having to depend on family or go into debt. Hops was one of those crops, and then now with hemp, it's another specialty crop that's coming of age.
The work they're doing at the Hop Yard has greatly benefited from their professional relationship with the University of Nebraska's Dr. Ishmael Dwicat, who has been studying hemp for more than a decade. Ishmael tells me growing hemp requires much more finesse than many producers initially think.
One of the major mistakes, it's people need to know how far and the spacing, the plant density, how much fertilizer, how deep the seed is going to be planted. These are very important to know how many plants per acre, how deep the seed need to be planted, how much nutrient the plants need, how much water the plants need at different stages. Because hemp is a little bit different than soybean and corn. It's require more nutrients when it's growing vegetatively, and then we have to change the nutrient regime when they start flowering, especially if you are growing it for CBD. So these are some of the important information the farmers need to know. And besides, because hemp is a new crop in here, we don't really have enough pesticide, especially herbicide or insecticide, to be used in hemp yet. So we need to make sure that before we grow all out with the hundreds and hundreds of acres, make sure that we have enough hands to control the weeds, and then make sure that we plant it in a way that we won't have any insect or diseases on the crop.
Legislative Bill 657 was introduced by Senator Justin Wayne of Omaha and has paved the way for potential producers to apply for hemp licenses. While Senator Wayne was pleased with the passage of the bill and the initial push to get the new crop rolling in the Cornhusker State, he was even more eager to get more producers involved.
We created funding for at least 500. We don't know to date why the department only chose 10, but next year we're eliminating that authority, that if you meet the federal requirements, you will be granted a permit to grow. I mean, it's a $22 billion industry, they hope, in the next 5 to 10 years. So we think Nebraska can play a critical role, considering we have the best soil for hemp production, and being that we're centrally located, we can supply both the East and the West Coast fairly cheaply. So I think we'll have a huge impact going forward.
While it's been slow going in the first year of hemp production in the state, Annette tells me that testing the waters with fewer producers will ultimately be a blessing in disguise for those who decide to follow suit in the years to come.
So I think right now it's really state dependent on what's happening in these different areas. Until the USDA releases the policy, then everybody will be scrambling to try to figure out, are they within policy, are they below policy, are they higher than policy, and then work all that out. Well, you have all these farmers knocking on the door saying, I want a license, and our USDAs still don't even know how to manage some of that stuff. I think, Nebraska cautious isn't always a bad thing, especially with new crops coming out. The situation that farmers are in today with watching their pennies, I would say be happy that our state is the way that it is and that we are cautious as opposed to just letting the floodgates go, have our farmers have a bad experience, and then not really be able to do anything with this crop at some days. So.
For now, one of the biggest issues Nebraska hemp producers will face is the amount of wild or feral hemp that's scattered around the state. If CBD is what you're after, a greenhouse operation may be your only option, as cross-pollination could occur very easily with the current conditions for growing outdoors. And this could potentially ruin an entire crop. If, however, you're interested in producing hemp for textile fiber, an outdoor operation would probably work just fine. Either way, we'll be keeping an eye on how things are going at the hop yard when we get an inside look at their first harvest later this winter and see what changes, if any, lawmakers will put forth in the upcoming legislative assembly. And Troy, that's what I've got my eye on this week. For now, I'll send it back to you.